Today's reflection is taken from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 20, verses 1 to 16. And it's about the labourers in the vineyard. And the main question for us to focus on is from the landowner, who says to his hired hands, "Are you envious because I am generous?" Anyone who has anything to do with children, whether as a parent or as a teacher or in church, knows that one of their most frequently uttered phrases is, "It's not fair." This issue may be about the amount of food on their plates, or their turn to play with a favourite toy, or perhaps the time they have to go to bed. It could be any number of things. But the cry is still the same from the child, as they say, "It's not fair." I wonder, where do small children get this sense of fairness from? It is perhaps built into human nature, a sense that the world should be a fair place, but often is not, and that human beings have the right to protest if things are not fair. And this sense stays with us as we grow up. As adults, we still grumble if we feel someone else has got the promotion or the job or the credit for something that we feel we deserve. And so often is the case these days, we protest if we feel our rightful needs are not met, especially if we believe those of our neighbours are. At its extreme, this sense of the importance of fair play can lead to horrific action. Not so long ago, a man in America who had in fact been cleared of wrongdoing was killed by his neighbours because they thought he was guilty of a heinous crime of which he had been wrongly accused. He should get his just deserts, they thought. And so they took matters into their own hands. This human sense of fairness is what gives the parable of the workers in the vineyard its shock value today. The landowner hires some labourers at the beginning of the day, and he agrees with them the normal daily wage, and they agree with him on what that wage should be for a full day's work. The landowner goes again and hires more people at midday. He hires even more people in the middle of the day, and then he hires even more people towards the end of the day. When pay time comes, the last people to be hired are paid first, and they get a full day's wage. The first people to be hired see this, and they expect more. It's only fair they should be paid more. They were hired in the morning. So they are disgusted to be paid only a normal day's rate for a full day's pay, even though this is what they had agreed to with the landowner. I wonder whose side you are on when you hear this story. Do you think that those workers who were hired in the morning have a point? Think of your workplace, or perhaps a similar scenario within your village. Would it be fair for everyone to be paid the same, a full day's wage, without regard for whether they had done a full day's work? The landowner's response to the objections is really thoroughly unsatisfactory to them. Of course, he can do what he likes. It's his money. But it does not address the issue of fairness for them, which is the problem for them. It's just not fair. How might Jesus' first listeners have reacted, I wonder? Perhaps we might imagine the audience expressing agreement with the first workers, the ones that were hired in the morning. It's not fair, someone in the crowd might shout. They should have got more for all that extra work. But perhaps a more thoughtful person in the crowd might say, but the workers who are hired near the end of the day, how are they to feed their families if they are only paid for an hour? Ah, someone else might reply, but that's their own lookout if they hang around the marketplace all day instead of doing a full day's work. But perhaps it wasn't their fault, replies our first listener. Perhaps they did their best to be hired, but there wasn't enough work to go around that day. Isn't it better that the landowner should be unfair rather than the children of the people who are hired at the end of the day should starve? You can see where our imaginary discussion has taken us. It has shifted the ground of the debate from issues of individual fairness to broader issues of social justice. My imaginary debate is one that we all need to have with ourselves from time to time. The example of the neighbourhood vigilantes show how easy it is for our inbuilt human sense of fairness to get out of hand. It is good to pay attention to what is fair, but it is also right to think beyond issues of our individual rights and to pay attention to the broader issues of social justice and the common good. But this is not just a story. Today's Gospel reading is prefaced with the words, "The kingdom of heaven is like." This is a story about God, who we suppose is represented by the landowner. Are you envious because I am generous? The landowner asks the workers. And by analogy, God may well ask us. Yes, we might reply. We are envious because you are generous. We want to get what's rightfully ours. But then we might remember how little we deserve God's generosity towards us. And then we might be willing to share that generosity with others. Amen.